Over the summer, we've been sharing our stories from our time in quarantine, or quarantine tide, as I'm calling it. We have so many stories to share, and as we prepare to wrap up this series of services, we have barely scratched the surface of the stories we might tell. This is only a beginning. Today's theme is learning. What have you learned on quarantine? Again, this is only a beginning, or a re-beginning, or yet another re-beginning in a life of beginning and beginning and beginning. Genesis 1:1 is often translated, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But a more accurate translation is, "In the beginning of God's creating, ongoing creation that is without end, in the beginning of God's creating of the heavens and the earth." Like the never-ending creation of the heavens and the earth, our learning, our dance with wisdom, our relationship with Lady Wisdom is eternal, ever beginning and beginning and beginning again. You are a wise community. Every week you repeat, "May Holy Wisdom enter through our ears, and may she find a home in our hearts." You are a wise community that has committed yourselves to following the voice of wisdom as she consistently leads us to new places and new ways of being. Long before COVID, I would have called you a people of wisdom and a people willing to listen to wisdom as she begins again and again and again to create the heavens and the earth in the image of a God of love. And there is something unique at the same time about this season of sheltering in place. There has been something unique about this attention to justice and to injustice in this season. There has been something unique about the cavernous quality of quarantine tide, where we settle in and watch documentaries and listen to podcasts and read books, and thank the eternal one, more and more books are available on tape. So we settle into recordings of books and online conferences and classes that we never would have been able to travel to. There is something about this last year and a half that has invited learning, that has welcomed wisdom as she saunters into our homes and seeks to instruct us. There is also something about the emptiness of this time that has made it full. A deepening connection with creation, as outside is the safest place to be, a dance with our yards and gardens, and as the cafes and commons we're used to frequenting closed. A new hospitality to the birds and butterflies and bunnies and bees that visit our windows and our patches of land, as they become the only visitors we know won't endanger our health. There's been both an opportunity to deepen our knowledge and thereby our wisdom about the wide world, and an opportunity to get our hands dirty, connecting with the narrow world right outside our windows. I know from so very many conversations with you all over the last year and a half that learning has been our constant companion over this physically distanced time. And so it is with great anticipation that I invite us to share what we have learned from Lady Wisdom these many months. And as we each add our own portrait of her love and justice and welcome and righteousness, we piece together a more complete picture for everyone of what Lady Wisdom speaks to us as a community and as a world. As my pastor in seminary taught me, all of us are smarter than one of us. This morning, I look greatly forward to listening to one another and to all of us, and to us as a unit as we become wise, as we find that reverberating between our voices, Lady Wisdom has made herself fully visible in our presence. So I ask, what have you learned over the last year and a half? Over the last year and a half, what is a story of learning? Maybe it's a moment where you learn something. Maybe it's a movement. Maybe it's a theme. Maybe it's a resource. Maybe it's a thread that is woven into the whole story of the pandemic so far. Maybe it's something you're learning right now. As an example, a story might be for me. Myself, my garden has been my classroom. I knew very little about gardening. I knew that grass was not a good use of land, of the land that my family tends. And I knew the melancholy of quarantine was calling for something more vibrant and joyful. And I knew we might sell our house in a couple of years and a beautiful garden would probably add to curb appeal. But I knew very little about what I was actually doing. Nonetheless, we tore up the grass. We did some Googling. We joined several online gardening groups to ask our questions. We learned a good deal to start, and then we just started, knowing that our wisdom was incredibly incomplete. And then it's then that the learning begins. We've watched what grows. We've seen birds move our seeds around. We've seen volunteers pop up in places where things we carefully planted failed. We've grafted together a branch that our daughter accidentally broke. We've watched bees. We've slowed down and watched bees and butterflies dance and caught glimpses of rushing hummingbirds. And we've learned so many technical pieces of gardening. And we've had to do a lot of technical learning about gardening. But we've also learned something about the earth, about her independence of us, and about her interdependence with us, about her goodness and abundance, about the wild tastiness she cultivates when we step back and let her be wild. We've learned about the community of creatures that flow quickly into any space that is opened to the wild goodness of earth. We've learned about gardening, but more so, we've learned about earth and our relationship to her. So, welcome to my learning lab. So I wonder, what is your story of learning this season? What have you learned? What do you long to share with us? What have you learned? I invite you to share.